By 2005, Jak and Daxter was very popular, well, in North America at least. In Japan, the first game sold like crazy, but the series went downhill after the second game because, well...
Wait, I've seen you before. You're with the Underground.
Shh! I'm Tess. Torn sent me to spy on Crew. Play along, and I may be able to get my hands on a few of Crew's secrets.
Oh, I love it!
Suddenly, with the 7 generations of consoles coming around, Naughty Dog decided to start a new IP called Uncharted, and after that trilogy was done, Jak 4 was in development, but it was then cancelled after it was decided that it strayed far away from the original formula too much, and it was scrapped in favor for The Last of Us, and people were still hoping for a new Jak and Daxter game, but Naughty Dog then announced that they didn't want to do any more cartoony platformers anymore, so... that idea was thrown out the window, and leaving Jak and Daxter to be one of those franchises who were unfortunate enough to fall under the PlayStation curse. So while Jak X was the last game to be developed by Naughty Dog, it wasn't the last game in the series. So in E3 2003, Sony announced that they were working on their first portable console. Then a year later, they unveiled their console, the PlayStation Portable, aka the PSP. It was supposed to be their answer to Nintendo's DS. All stories showed the PS flopped in sales. It mostly had to do with the fact that Nintendo was pretty much dominating the handheld business during this era, with the DS selling over 150 million copies worldwide, while Sony's PSP... So yeah, Sony wasn't doing too well in the handheld market, which honestly kind of sucks because there were some pretty good games on the PSP, like Mega Man Powered Up and God of War Ghosts of Sparta. However, the one game that seems to be remembered fondly about the PSP is Daxter. I have only heard praise for Daxter and hardly anything negative. It will get the greatest hits label for the PSP, so yeah, I think it's safe to say that this is probably one of the only PSP games people remember. It's also a perfect time to bring up the fact that since Naughty Dog was working on Uncharted at the time, they decided to hire a new developer to work on this game, Ready at Dawn, and apparently this was their first game too. Before this game, I didn't really have any prior knowledge of their previous games, but after doing a little bit of research, I found out they worked on Okami, which I haven't played yet, but it's always been on my backlog. Their most recent games is the Echo series, which has pretty positive reception from what I'm seeing. So they seem like a pretty quality developer, and it seems like Daxter didn't take too long to develop either. Since this game came out not even 6 months after Jak X, I've always thought it was kind of crazy how some developers can make really quality games in a short amount of time. I'm always thinking about how they get around the stuff that works and the stuff that doesn't work so quickly. But maybe I'm taking too deep into this. I think it's also important to mention that I'm emulating this on a PSP emulators, so there might be a little lag from here and there. And also, this is the second time that I'm recording footage for this game, because the footage didn't render in 60 FPS, so now we're recording it again. And also, the audio might sound a little bit muffled, so yeah. I'm sorry, but I really don't feel like playing this game a third time. But with that out the way, we have a story to analyze, so here's your spoiler warning. If you haven't played this game yet, then skip to this time frame. You have 5 seconds. So the game opens up with when Jak and Daxter pop into Haven City and then they're approached by Errol and the Crimson Guard. Daxter then runs away, promising Jak will come back for him. Like I said in my Jak 3 review, this game's story takes place in between the 2 years that have gone by in Jak 2, between Jak getting taken by Errol to Daxter rescuing him. So off the bat, that sounds pretty interesting, but playing the game where it's the time skip from Jak 2, it would be pretty critical to see how Daxter would be struggling to survive in Haven City all by himself, then seeing how happy he would be when he sees Jak. So instead of just showing us what's been happening for the past 2 years, the game just says lol, no, and just throws up until the 2 weeks before Daxter rescues Jak. This was really stupid writing on the writer's end, but how good did I when I'm finished talking about the story? So almost 2 years later, Daxter is seen telling lies about how he took on Metalhead creatures in a bar. An old man named Osmo comes up to him and gives him a proposition for bug extermination, which he turns down at first, but then he does it anyway because... plot? So anyway, from here on out, the game is basically just go to this place and then kill all these bugs, and you're just doing that for 5 to 6 hours. But then Daxter remembers that he has a friend and goes to rescue him, only to go back to exterminating. Daxter also meets up with some new faces to help him out, but they're all pretty uninteresting and unmemorable. One of the biggest problems I have with the story is the lack of characterization. To be honest, that was kind of a problem in Jak X, but I think it might be even worse here. You meet up with Tarn, who is basically just Ashlyn but with blue hair. She doesn't really contribute anything other than giving Daxter his weapons throughout the game. Then there's Osmo's son, Simon, fuck, his name's Simon. Simon's pretty much every single surfer dude stereotype you see. He just says bro and dude alive. No, seriously, take a shot every time they say dude in this game.
Hey little furry dude, get in!
Thanks, dude.
Welcome, dude.
How long is this gonna go on?
You charge you the places you need to be at, but that's pretty much it. Then we have the game's main villain, Caden. Compared to the villains from past games, this guy is pretty boring. He's just someone who wants to get Ozmo's business shut down because plot, and also since Ozmo is only in like, what, 25% of the game, this doesn't really make me go, that bastard. It just makes me feel apathetic to the thing as a whole. And also Daxter meets his bug and names it Tick after looking at his genitalia without asking, and then suddenly his sidekick now. But then literally like an hour without interaction with him, Caden comes and kills Tick, and it's supposed to be an emotional scene, and now Daxter wants to kill him. You can see where I'm getting at with this, right? So anyway, after Daxter finds out about a delivery to the Baron's palace, he then goes there and with a disguise, and after a really drawn out cutscene with Daxter and Errol, he finally enters the palace to find Jak. After overhearing a conversation with Errol and Count Beaver from Jak 3 about Dark Eco, Daxter finds out about where they're holding Jak. He then goes to the prison that Jak is in, which is the best level in the game, and meets up with Caden, who transforms into a giant monster. Then Daxter goes after him. In a very challenging but well-designed boss fight, Daxter defeats Caden and goes up to where Jak is being held and kicking off the events of Jak 2. The game ends with Daxter telling the story of this game. Okay, so I know it's only a portable game and I can't be too harsh on it for that, but I can't really help but point out that the story from a presentation standpoint is a complete mess. The game acts like it's a missing piece to the Jak and Daxter canon that fills in all the loose ends from the trilogy, but instead leaves a lot of unanswered questions that shouldn't need to be asked in the first place. Like, how come Ozmo sees Daxter running away in the beginning of the game, but then doesn't approach him for another 2 years? That's like if Crash found out that Cortex was trying to kill his friends, and then he waited a whole 2 years just before he could rescue them. And also the fact that they didn't show what Daxter was up to during the 2-year time gap. Instead of just dumps him before Jak was saved. This was a huge missed opportunity. They couldn't really show off how hopeless and lonely Daxter was in the city. There could have been so much more, but they just said, we can't bother to think of anything interested, and it just started before Daxter got Jak back. Just the fact that we're not shown anything between those 2 years is my biggest issue with the story, leaving me a huge fan of the series, feeling underwhelmed. And also the game just kinda ends abruptly too. I can't really explain it, something just feels like it was missing from this ending. And also, once the credits are done rolling, you're just booted back to Ozmo's place like if the game just resetted. I know so you can play the rest of the dream level but you missed, but it just feels weird. But again, this is a game on the PSP, so I'm not going to expect platinum writing from here. But anyway, let's get on to the gameplay. So in this game, you take control of Daxter, and the name of the game is to kill bugs, then go to the next area, then kill more bugs, repeat, and then die. Daxter's moveset isn't very complex. You can jump, crawl, and use a bug zapper for combat. In one of the first cutscenes, Ozmo equips Daxter with a bug zapper so he can do melee combat, and early on he gets a bug spray that's used as a ranged weapon and is used for platforming too. The controls are pretty solid. S is to jump and double jump, square is to do melee attacks, circle is to use a spray bug, and triangle is to crouch. Since the PSP only has one analog stick, the camera is mapped to the L and R triggers. Combat in this game isn't really as in-depth as in Jak 2. With the bug zapper, you can do a 4-hit combo, with the final hit being a slam attack that splats bugs. You can also do it a second or third time to kill a bug behind you. You can also spray the bugs too. There's different versions of the bug spray. The green one is basically the normal bug spray. The fire one sets anything on fire and they spontaneously combust. Then, replaying this game for the second time kind of made me realize how broken this weapon is. You can literally just press set an enemy button and they're completely out of your way. And the blue one for explosions, it uses up more energy than the fire or normal spray, but it does more damage than both of them combined. From the reviews I've seen, a lot of people tend to think that the combat kind of slows the game spacing down to a halt, which I agree with to an extent. Yeah, the combat can get pretty repetitive at times, and when you're fighting bigger bugs, it's kind of annoying, but it does feel pretty good taking down the smaller guys with ease. Plus the bomb spray can pretty much one-shot anything in the blast and you're fine. So yeah, I don't really like the combat that much, but it's not really that bad to be honest. But in general, the platforming in this game is where this game truly shines. Honestly, when this game focuses on the main platforming, it has some of the best platforming bits in the series. Because of Daxter's smaller frame, you can go into levels with a different perspective from what you usually expect when you're playing as Jak. He can climb up surfaces, crawl on monkey bars, and climb on narrow surfaces, and zipline on roads a la Crash 4 style. A lot of these moves are developed throughout the game and are used in pretty clever ways too. The crawling maneuver goes a little bit underutilized. You use it in the first few levels and the last 2 levels of the game to sneak past the guards and go into vents. That's as much use as you'll get out of it. Bug spray is also used as a platforming mechanic too. You can use it to hover over anything, and you can grab these eco ores to hover for as long as you can. In the earlier parts of the game, you could hover over fire for a higher ground, but it's quickly forgotten after the flamethrower was introduced. While this can feel a little bit finicky at times, and there were times where I was desperately holding out the circle, but I was more of fear of me missing the eco orb so I wouldn't get a longer hang time. Overall, the hovering mechanic is alright, and doesn't really have any hindrance to this game as a whole. Daxter is fun to control for the most part. I say for the most part because for some reason, Daxter cannot run straight. This isn't really too bad when you're playing this game with a controller, but it's way more noticeable when you're playing it with a keyboard. And this also might just be a keyboard thing, but I swear sometimes the game just straight up refuses to read my inputs. I know it looks like I'm just bad at the game, but why would I feel the need to just careen off the edge of a cliff? I did try to use my Nintendo Switch controller to play this game, but honestly, that just made it even worse. I then tried using my brother's PS4 controller, and the game felt so much better to control with that. Daxter's movements are pretty quick and precise, and it just made the experience even better for me in general. So yeah, if you plan on playing this game, get it on original hardware, or if you're using a PSP emulator like I am, and if you have a PS4 controller, or maybe a PS5 controller, use that. The platforming in the final level, the prison, uses all the skills that you learned at that point and puts it all to the test like a final level should do. This level also does a pretty good job of making Daxter feel like he's on a rescue mission. You need to sneak past the Crimson guards around the place, and if you don't do it properly, they'll shoot you on sight. This level also uses crawling to its best abilities. This is the only time you'll use it in the, 3 or 4 levels where it's necessary, but it works pretty well in this level, and all leads out to a pretty challenging boss fight. There's 3 phases here. The first phase is pretty much a waiting game where he attacks you a couple of times, and then you wait for him to start charging up, and then you blast him with the bomb spray. Then in the second phase, you use the flamethrower to drain the Dark Eco that's under you guys. Now in the final phase, you can destroy these towers so you can attack them head on. This was a pretty good boss fight and a great way to cap off the game. And probably the best part about this boss fight, if you die in one phase, you don't have to restart the entire boss from the beginning. And since we're already on the topic of bosses, let's talk about the other 2. This game doesn't have that many boss fights, but the only one that's worth mentioning is the final boss, to be honest. The first boss is alright, but this is probably just me, but whenever he fires his purple bomb, I'm usually able to dodge the first one fine, but I swear no matter how much I try or where I am, this green dickhead always knows where I'm about to land when he fires the second bomb. But that's pretty much it, I just wanted to bring that up. The second boss is pretty much the final boss, but not as fun. The tactics that are used to defeat the boss kinda cool, but other than that, it's pretty meh. While most of the game is spent on foot, there's a couple of vehicle sessions to switch up the gameplay every once in a while. They're usually very brief though. First is the Surface Zoomer, which is used to clean up the Dark Eco in Breeze Valley, kinda like the Precursor Basin and Precursor Legacy. Now, just like in that game, I don't really think too highly of the Zoomer in this game either. It controls better than the Zoomer in Jak 1, but the levels that it uses are just kinda boring. Next is the Ranger Zoomer, which is pretty much like the Surface Zoomer but bigger. You use an Emerald Isle to take down the bug dragonfly thing. The first time you're chasing it down to bomb it, and the second time you're shooting it down while it's chasing you. And finally there's the Scooter, which makes navigating Haven City faster than it would be on foot. Well, it's pretty fun to control for the most part, sometimes. This is probably a good time to bring this up. Does anyone else feel like Daxter's default speed in this game feels a little bit too slow? At least compared to Jak's in the earlier games. It's not a consistent problem, but I always feel the need to ask for it when I feel like I'm not moving fast enough to get somewhere. And just like in Jak 2, Haven City is the main area of the game and how you get from place to place. The entire city could have brought here, or else the PSP would start to catch on fire trying to render a PS2 game on a handheld that's not even smoother than my hair. But what has been recreated, the devs did a pretty good job bringing all that to here. And also there's these mini games where you either press the PlayStation symbols or the D-pad at the right time. Most people don't really mind this, but me personally, I can't stand these, mainly because I had to use A, S, D, and W for the PlayStation symbols, and I keep on forgetting where I mapped the buttons, and also the left keys were where my PlayStation buttons were, and the right keys were where my D-pad was. So what I was used to at this point was completely reversed, when I have to remember that left is PlayStation buttons, and the right is my D-pad. And yes, I know this is technically my fault for not mapping the keys in a way that I was comfortable with, but it just really shows that the games like this weren't built for a keyboard. So most things in this game are pretty well done. There is just one thing that kind of bothers me about the gameplay, and honestly, it doesn't even have to do with the gameplay itself. So one more I talk about the problem about characterization in this game's story. Well, that problem also extends during gameplay too, and unfortunately it comes from the Orange Rat himself. So Daxter's entire personality revolves around the fact that he never knows when to shut up. He's always cracking jokes and always has something to say about someone and about the situation that's being brought up. So for someone who's always running his mouth in past games,
I told you we shouldn't have come here, and you listened! What? Okay. I'm fine.
he's completely silent during gameplay. That might have to do with the fact that these levels don't really have anything noteworthy to comment on, but still though, he only has 2 lines during levels in the whole 7 hours of the game, and it's only just him stating the obvious.
Daxter.
management says you've got to destroy every one of those termite mounds before they activate the exit elevator.
My keen exterminator sense tells me that these termite mounds are the problem.
He does normal stuff during cutscenes, but in gameplay, just dead silence outside of the music and your friends calling you to come somewhere for bug extermination, but that's it. It's just kind of disappointing that Orange Lightning is being his normal talkative self during gameplay.
Dax, get in the car!
Jack! Are you crazy? You ruined my story!
Now!
So let's bring up this game's collectibles. The precursor orbs are here, but they're not used like they are in Jak 1. Instead of needing 90 precursor orbs to get this thing, you need to collect them to get Daxter's dream sequences, which are pretty much glorified quick time events, and you know, people don't like those, but thankfully only the first one is mandatory. All the other ones are optional. The dream segments are all parodies of popular movies, like The Matrix, Braveheart, Lord of the Rings, and more. Completing them gives Daxter either more health or new moves, which are whipped straight from Jak's moveset from the other games. You won't really use them throughout the game that much, so yeah. Getting more health is cool and all, but you can beat the game without upgrading your health. This isn't exactly the hardest game you'll come across. Then there's the Metalhead Awards, which instead of being used to unlock a new move, they're used as a way to access certain places, which I guess is kind of cool, but by the end of each level, I already passed the quota for Metalhead Awards that were required. In some levels, I got every single orb that was there. Honestly, I completely forgot that there needed access in the other levels until someone brought it up in another review. I feel like they should have had Precursor Orb locked behind the level and Metalhead Orbs to unlock the Dream level. While Precursor Orbs aren't hard to find, it isn't easy to get them all in one level, that's like the Metalhead Orbs. And when I finished the game, I had like 600 Precursor Orbs, and to be honest, I don't really feel need to want to 100% the game other than to unlock the Daxter Mobile and Jak X, but even then, I'm playing this on an emulator and not a PSP, so I wouldn't be able to do that anyway. Level design in this game is pretty confident, they're all pretty linear and straightforward, and there is the occasional where am I going moment, but the moment does a pretty good job in guiding you into where you need to go, and subtly too. It doesn't give you instructions like, hey dumbass, go over here, it lets you figure it out for yourself. Honestly, the game isn't too hard. There are some moments where there are really close calls during platforming. Some of these I'm not even sure how I was able to survive. Now, there are 3 levels that are more open-ended and ditch the linear level design of the normal levels. In these levels, you look for crystals, destroy eggs, and kill bugs. There are those where am I going moments in this game. Another moment in this game I felt this way the most was when I was playing these levels. The third one isn't that bad since the design of the level isn't as open as the first 2, but the first 2 are a complete pain to navigate since everything looks the same. Just look at my footage here sped up. Nothing here sticks out. Just be spending a long time just looking for a missing crystal or 1 egg. But then again, that's only in 3 levels, and even then, it only gets worse in 2 levels. While most of the levels are smooth sailing, I almost forgot to mention that this game has a mode called Bug Combat. As you play through the game, you collect these potions and bugs to play through bug combat. This mode pretty much takes those bugs and pits them against each other in what's essentially a Pokemon battle. It's nothing really special, I just thought I should bring that up. I know it's gonna be that one guy who's gonna start whining if I don't. Alright, so let's talk about the graphics. For 2006 and for one of the first PSP games, the visuals are gorgeous. Yeah, not as pretty as the PS2 game, but considering how early this game came out during the PSP's life, this game still looks pretty nice. They want to go with the Jak 2 and Jak 3 route with having the characters have a lot of detail during cutscenes to completely downgrading them in order to get the game running smoothly, which I guess I can get on that, seeing that this is a handheld game and that's to be expected. But part of me kind of wishes that they told the story using the in-game models, because the cutscenes in this game are pre-rendered, so they can come out a little bit pixelated. And also, it is a little bit disappointing cutscenes to be rendered in 60 FPS, but the regular game is rendered in 30. Like, I don't care that much about frame rate. I just find that kind of weird. And also, I want to point this out real quick. When Daxter is standing idle, he puts the bug zapper away, but when the player moves him again, he brings it back out. Nothing really special, I just wanted to talk about that. This game also has a pretty decent soundtrack. Well, they don't really go as hard on the OST like in Jak X. Honestly, they didn't need to. They just kept in line with the original trilogy by making a more adventurous and mysterious vibe to the music, and I think it worked out in their favor. My favorite track might be the credits theme. So in conclusion, Daxter is a pretty fun game from start to finish. Yeah, the story was a little bit disappointing to me as a Jak and Daxter fan, but the core game it's pretty fun stuff. There are a couple of things that either bother me or straight up pissed me off, and while the combat's pretty weak, the main platforming is what the game gets right, and in the end, that's all I could ask for in a Jak and Daxter game. For this first game, Radiohead did an excellent job at bringing the platforming games from PS2 to the portable scene. Well, I wouldn't recommend dropping every single console you have just to get a PSP game from 2006, but if you're able to emulate it, then go for it just to see if you would like it or not. I mean, for the price that this game goes for on eBay, if you have a PSP, you wouldn't lose too much sleep for adding this game into your collection. It just kind of sucks that this game was only on a handheld that not many people cared about. It's also kind of weird how out of the Ratchet and Clank and Jak and Daxter games on PSP, this was the only one that didn't get a PS2 port, which is weird because honestly, this game would be too out of place on the PS2. But if I'm being honest, I don't really see a reason to go back to this game other than a Let's Play or for 100% completion. I mean, I still enjoyed myself with this game, but there's nothing here that makes me want to play it again outside of the platforming. But at the very least, this was better than the fate Clank had on this console. When after first release, it met with high review scores, with 8, 9s, and even 10s going around. It would even get the greatest hits label later on. But for a while, this was the last Jak and Daxter game that was made for a couple of years. But that's all for this video. I'm sorry to say that this is going to be the last review for the year. I'm sorry, but I really don't think I have enough time to make another one. And also, I won't be doing anything until the new year, so yeah. So next time we meet, we're going to be looking at the last Jak and Daxter game in the series, Jak and Daxter: The Lost Frontier.
Finish it! Finish it!